So the last weekly update of January. In February, I'm going to be trying to move to a more consistent schedule. So this week, I've been doing some stuff on the back end to kind of make sure I'm well organized for that. I don't know exactly how fast I'll be at that right out of the gate because I've got plans this weekend, but I'm excited. Twitch has been a blast to spend time on streaming every week. I got all of my tanks to cap today on stream, and then over the last week, I got all my gatherers to cap, so I am moving through that. That was kind of my big goal, was to have both those things done in January. So with that done, I got a chance to do all the job quests on tanks. Those are all now done. Any missing straggler job quests that were kind of on there as I leveled them up. And so I'd like to start working on getting their relics in Final Fantasy XIV, getting them all to level 500 relics, just so that I'm in a good spot for 545. To upgrade those to whatever the next tier of relic is. And then I'd like to start kind of working on, I did install ACT for the first time this week. So, the first step of damage meters is don't discuss damage meters, but here I am discussing it. So I installed it all I want from it is to see my own damage. All I want from it is to see where the mistakes are with my own rotation. I just want to know where I can get better. I don't really want it for anything but that, and the fact that Stone Sky Sea Air doesn't really help you understand what you're doing. When you're in the middle of an Eden pull and mechanics get crazy, are you dropping the chance to use global cooldowns? Are you failing to get that fifth fell cleave in an Infuriate? Are you letting Eye of the Storm fall off, right? And these just very basic things to a core mechanic that can let me jump from 8,000 DPS to keeping it pegged at over 10,000 in my current eye level. And it really is that much of a difference. It's a 20% DPS loss if I start letting Eye of the Storm fall off, if I let a couple globals get wasted, and if I start having a couple of my Infuriates drop Velcleaves, it's a 2,000 DPS loss just from really those three mistakes. I try to get out of mechanics. I usually only get hit by one, maybe zero in a normal pull. Eternity sometimes gets me because once I mess up once, I get a little flustered. But the first three, I can pretty much nail those. So I'm only dying if I'm just not getting heals, which means I kind of need to know what the rest of the party is doing. And that's something I'm still very, very focused on, doing my rotation and dodging mechanics. And so I'm not yet to a point where I can toss a defensive on someone else. I'm not yet to where I can really just respond to anybody else. I'm just I'm just doing me in front of the boss, main tanking, and that's really it. But I do think it's making me better, and I think it's making me understand the differences between the other tanks better, so I do look forward to kind of chasing better parses with Warrior and then moving on to better parses with all four tanks, so I can just be a better player. And that's tools that aren't baked into the game native. In WoW, I've got roughly 10 levels to go to have all my tanks at 50. They're both split across Paladin and DK, so I'm getting really close there. Got a couple of levels today. Didn't really get to touch it last week outside of vendor shuffles. I'm coming up on 1.2 million gold in WoW. And then this week I made over 3 million in 14. Unfortunately, I started the week at almost 11 million and I blew through 5 or 6 million. So I'm still down in that 7, 8 million range. So I need to... leveling crafters was a lot of spending, and so I'm hoping that now I can start seeing the money kind of trickle in and stop just slowly bleeding. Rapidly bleeding. So hoping to get the money in the more upward direction on 14. I'm excited to have hopefully maybe several million coming in each and every week as I get better at that. I'm going to be crafting on Wednesdays on stream. So I'll work through all the job quests first. That way everybody has their level 65 ability. And then because I have to unlock that for each one. And then from there, I'll work on getting them into white script gear. I just put them in vendor gear so they could be right there, and then I'll move them up into white script gear, and then I'll progress my way through. I want to make my own sets. I want to understand how the progression works, do my own Skysteel tools, get a feel for it, see if I can get me into best slot gathering and crafting. By doing it myself and really only focusing on it mostly on Wednesdays is the plan for now. It may take me the rest of the expansion to get best in slot. That's fine. In my mind, crafting and gathering content for me is really it's a thing about the journey, not the destination, as opposed to battle class gears. If you want best in slot, you want it now. You want it as soon as possible so you can start working at that top level parse. If that skill speed adjustment allows you to clear a threshold where it changes something, right? You want to see those big numbers as soon as possible. But for crafting and gathering, I take a very different approach there. So that's kind of my plan this week, is to hopefully kind of get through a couple more levels on WoW, kind of keep those moving along. I'd like to be at 50 this week on stream. I will have to cut stream short on Friday because I have to go pick up a rental car. I'm having a small event for my one of my closest friends' weddings. So one of my longest, oldest, best friends, he's getting married, and I'm gonna go pick the groomsmen up, and we're gonna have a weekend together. We've all been self-isolating, and then we'll self-isolate after, and then we'll self-isolate going into the wedding itself. So rented a house for us to just kind of hang out. We'll leave. My wife will be here. I think part of her is enjoying the idea of us. We've spent all of 2020 within 20 feet of each other. So very, very rarely are we apart for more than a couple hours. So, it'll be nice to do that. Content wise, I am moving more towards a schedule. Like I said, I kind of have a tentative schedule for February and how I want. It'll start the week with weekly posts on Mondays, and then I kind of have a theme for each of the other 6 days. And so certain types of posts will fall into that theme. So it won't be identical posts every week, but it'll be kind of like, that's when you can expect this type of content. And the reason I want to move towards that is that makes like my AM post every day really linear, really predictable. PM posts will be things like news. So when February 5th gets here, of course, there'll be news and reactions coming out of the showcase event for 14, and in the days following that, same with WoW, things like that. If I add another game, those can go in the PM. They can just be loaded out at that. Probably the 2 PM time slot's kind of what I'm thinking. But for the AM post, I want that to be something, because I want to cover multiple games here, because I want to have multiple types of content here. I think that helps establish when you guys can expect certain type of content, so that if a post pops up that's not your thing, it's more of like, oh, well, that's just his Thursday post, and Thursdays are never my thing. So it's not like, especially to new people that come in, they've only been around for a week or two, they're not like, wow, I thought he was something different, I really don't like this content. It's like, no, that's once a week. You can just skip over that one, because I do want this to be a channel where I can make all the types of content I want to make, and I think that'll help kind of isolate what those things are. So that's kind of my plan, is to move to that. I may scale up from there over time, but that'll be 7 posts a week, with this being the first one of them on Mondays. And then on the other side of things, game-wise, I don't really have a goal or a guild goal. I just want to keep moving. I want to get everybody before the 20th of February. I want to have all of my tanks solidly into Shadowlands, ideally having more than just one at cap. So I'd like to be moving those along. I don't want to level anything unrested, so I kind of want to just start taking advantage of their rested and just moving them through Shadowlands. Maybe it's just multiple days of Bastion and then multiple days. So we'll kind of see where that fits within the stream schedule. Ideally, somewhere along the February-March timeline, we would also start to move to a consistent stream thing, so that you know which days there's which type of content. Thursdays at noon, I've really been enjoying the streams with Xandri this month, and we'll get a chance to talk about, like, is that the time slot that moves best for us moving forward? Is that something we still want to do for 2 hours each and every week? I think it's been a ton of fun, and from there, like, I'd like to kind of level up stream, so it's much more of like, this is like a 6-hour kind of produced show that happens each day, and each day, if it's not your thing, that's fine. When the next time is, and you guys can kind of rely on that. That's my objective with that. We'll see how long it takes to get there, but I'd like to kind of make this something where, like, there's some flexibility to it, so I can always do things I enjoy, but within that flexibility, there's also something where if there's only part of our content that you guys like, you don't feel like, I feel like every time I show up, they're doing the thing I don't care for. It's like, no, like, this is the set schedule. So if you like a certain type of content from us, while it may vary what version of that content I'm doing, that'll be on these days. At the very least, like, okay, on this afternoon of this day of the week, I always play this game, or I'm working on this goal right now. So for the next series of weeks, that's kind of the objective. So I'm just trying to start structuring things a little more, because I have some big projects coming, and I want to do, like, big series of videos here on YouTube. I want to have big sets sets of goals for work to game, and I want to have big sets of goals on stream. And I think the best way to keep those from either A, accidentally taking over my life and taking over the content itself, or B, never getting done, is to say, okay, those are getting done and they're getting done at exactly this interval. Especially with the upload schedule, especially with YouTube. Like if I want to make 10 of a type of video, I can do that because the stuff I'm making isn't time sensitive. And so like if I want to do the next 10 A Realm Revoiced things this weekend, I can get all 10 of those edited and pushed out the door if I could get all that done in a weekend, and then I can just schedule those out, and then they're kind of off in the future, right? So as long as whatever I'm talking about is not time sensitive, like, hey, there's this event going on in game and it ends in 3 days, like as long as there's nothing like that, it doesn't matter if it just kind of has to stack out in the schedule. So that's kind of my plan. Hopefully that makes sense. This is just the Monday post. This is just a place for me to organize my thoughts. I'd like to move it to being more structured, and being something where maybe there's some graphics here that talk about the previous week's goals, the previous week's content, both on Twitch and on YouTube for both gaming kinda and work to game. The upcoming weeks, ideally as I work further ahead, maybe even revealing a few of the videos if they're already uploaded. And then we got kind of what the stream goals are. And then from there, maybe talk about some of the things that are going on in and around gaming, because like it takes me kind of rambling to get all these thoughts out. And I think if I could get that a little more organized, there would be time to talk about the New York Times article that Ninja was in, talking about the press piece maybe a week or two ago where they talked about, the kid playing too much video games. It's not something that I want to spend a full post talking about, but it is what's going on in gaming, and it's good to be aware of, the following games are delayed. The following games are coming out this week. This game's having a patch, especially among MMOs. Especially as I start to talk about adding a third MMO to the channel, because my plan is not to slowly progress into Final Fantasy and WoW, where it's like, okay, you've got everything leveled, now go into raiding, now go into heroic, now go into mythic, meanwhile in 14, now go into extreme, now go into savage, now go into ultimate. It's to get up to a decent level of proficiency. With tanks, for example, I'd like to be blue parsing on normal Eden stuff, and whatever the current content is. And then on WoW, I'd like to be able to comfortably and reliably tank on M0. And if I can do that across all 10 tanks across both games, then in my mind, I would rather move to healers than go higher. And then once I have healers, it's like, okay, you have tanks and healers. Do I add DPS, or do I add a third game? Do I go a totally different direction and then get up to whatever that base level of proficiency is in that game, and get to where I just want to have a better, broader understanding of how different systems integrate. If that hasn't been made clear by the content that I put out here, it's not that I want to know every nitty gritty perfect detail about a system. It's not that I want to understand it the most detailed, the expert. I love that those experts are out there. I just don't want to be them. And what I'd rather be is the guy that says, okay, that's a lot like this game. That's a lot like this system. That's a little bit of this, and understand a broad spectrum of systems to at least a conversational level. And that starts with, I'm a main tank in both games. That starts with learning all of the other tanks in both games and getting proficient with them and getting proficient with the content from that standpoint. I can now clear all of Eden raids at a proficient level with all of the tanks, so I know tanking backward and forward. And when I watch Savage runs, it makes that much more sense. And I can already tell you, just having my Paladin for a day, I was sitting there watching Frosty stream, and I immediately was like, hey, that's that butt cone that the freaking Paladins have, where they spin around and they protect everybody behind them, and it's 85% reduced damage in a cone. I know that because I learned that ability today. And so I can already feel it working, and from there I want to learn healing, and that'll help me kind of gauge where wow, that's a lot of damage going out. From there, maybe pick up a few DPS, but odds are at that point I should have a pretty good understanding. When I watch Savage and Ultimate World first races, I should feel like I have a pretty good understanding of, okay, here's why they're running into a wall, here's they're not, at a casual level, and then listen to the experts commentate to fill in the gaps, and then of course move on to the next game and say, okay, who did it better this tier, who did it different, and so on. So that's my plan. I think that most aligns with what I want to get out of games, and then therefore sets me up to make the kind of content that I want to make. How convenient. Which is really just a chance for me to come here and on a variety of type of formats with, other creators, by myself, and so on. I can talk about the news, I can talk about guides, I can talk about opinions, predictions, past, present, future, anything dealing with games, kinda.